Get this trash out of my building now! Look at her knee! How utterly dreadful!
Make sure those photos are gone too.
I stood in that corporate lobby wearing my dead mother's old cardigan. The executives didn't just mock me, they destroyed my mother's photographs, called me insane, and had me dragged across marble floors. They had no idea I owned 40% of their company. What happened next? Let me show you how I buried them all. If you believe in justice and powerful revenge, you need to hear this entire story. Hit subscribe right now because what these people did will make your blood boil. And what I did back will give you chills. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single minute of this. Now, let me take you back to where my nightmare began. My name is Autumn, and I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I'm not just the CEO's wife. I never was. My father founded Sterling Industries 30 years ago, built it from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. When he died 2 years ago, he left me 40% of the company shares, the controlling stake when combined with my husband's 35%. The board holds the remaining 25%. But here's the thing. Nobody knew I owned those shares except my husband, Christopher, our lawyer, and the confidential records buried in legal documents that most people never bother to read. Christopher begged me to stay silent about my ownership. "Let me handle the business," he said, holding my hands after my father's funeral. "You've been through enough. Live peacefully. Let me carry this burden." And I believed him. God, I was so stupid. I believed him because I loved him, because I trusted him, because after 8 years of marriage, I thought we were partners. I hated corporate politics anyway. I preferred my quiet life, my books, my garden, my mother's recipes. I was happy being invisible, but I started noticing things changing about 6 months ago. Christopher came home later and later. His kisses became mechanical. His eyes looked through me instead of at me. And then, 3 days ago, I found divorce papers hidden in his study. They were unsigned, but they were there, detailed and cold, describing the division of assets. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but I didn't confront him. Something told me to wait, to watch, to see what he was really planning. That same night, I found something else. Financial documents showing massive transfers of company money to offshore accounts. Millions of dollars moved quietly over the past year. I'm not stupid. I studied business in college before I chose a simpler life. I knew what I was looking at. Someone was stealing from my father's company, and I had a terrible feeling Christopher was involved. So when Christopher left for work that morning and accidentally forgot the critical merger documents on his desk, I knew something was wrong. These weren't just any documents. They were time-sensitive papers for a deal worth $200 million. The deal closed today. Christopher never forgot important things. Never. This felt like a setup, but I couldn't understand why. What did he gain from forgetting these papers? I made a decision. I would take the documents to him myself, maybe surprise him at his office, maybe we could talk, maybe I could save our marriage. I dressed in my usual way, comfortable jeans, my mother's old cardigan that still smelled faintly of her perfume, and my worn sneakers. I pulled my hair into a simple ponytail. No makeup. I grabbed my mother's faded tote bag and carefully placed the documents inside, along with some family photographs I always carried, pictures of my father building his company, pictures of my mother, pictures of happier times. Our driver wasn't available that morning. Christopher said he needed him for company errands, so I took the subway, riding with regular people going to regular jobs, and I felt peaceful. I had no idea I was walking into a nightmare. Sterling Industries Tower rose 60 stories into the sky, all glass and steel and modern architecture. My father designed it himself. I'd only been inside twice, once for the grand opening, once for my father's memorial service. As I approached the massive entrance, my heart was beating fast. I was nervous about seeing Christopher, about trying to fix whatever was broken between us. The moment I stepped through those revolving doors, a security guard blocked my path. He was huge, with a shaved head and cold eyes. His name tag read Bruno. "Hey," he barked, "loading dock is in the back cleaning, lady." I blinked, startled. "Oh no, I'm not. I'm here to see Christopher Bennett, the CEO. I have important documents for him." Bruno's face twisted into a smirk. He actually laughed. Then he grabbed his radio. "We got a crazy one, boys. Says she's here to see the CEO." Static crackled, and I heard laughter from the other end. Within seconds, 2 more security guards appeared, forming a semicircle around me. They were trying to intimidate me, and it was working. My hands started shaking. "Ma'am, you need to leave," one of them said, "before we make you leave." "Please," I said, my voice quiet. "Just call his office. Tell them Autumn is here. He'll—" "Autumn?" Bruno interrupted. "That your street name?" The other guards laughed. I felt my face burning with humiliation, but I stood my ground. That's when I heard the clicking of expensive heels on marble floors. 3 people approached, 2 women and a man, all dressed in designer suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I recognized them from the company website I'd looked at once. Patricia, the chief operating officer, Harold, the chief financial officer, and Diane, vice president of operations. Christopher's top executives. Patricia saw me first. Her perfectly made-up face twisted in disgust. "Security!" she snapped. "Why is there a homeless woman sitting on our leather couch?" I wasn't even sitting on the couch. I was standing in the middle of the lobby, clutching my mother's tote bag. But I moved toward them anyway, relieved. Surely these educated professionals would be reasonable. "Hello," I said, trying to smile. "I'm Autumn Bennett. I'm here to—" "Bennett?" Harold interrupted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's Rich. What, you stalking our CEO? Using his last name?" He turned to Patricia. "This is exactly why we need better security protocols." "I'm his wife," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I just need to give him these documents. They're important." The 3 of them looked at each other and burst out laughing. Actually laughing, like I'd told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Diane was laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. "His wife?" Diane gasped between laughs. "Oh, honey, Christopher Bennett's wife doesn't take the subway. She doesn't wear whatever that is you're wearing." She gestured at my cardigan with barely concealed contempt. Patricia stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't know what kind of delusion you're living in, but you need to leave before we have you arrested." "Please," I begged, "just let me show you." I reached into my tote bag to pull out the documents, but Harold snatched the entire bag from my hands. The movement was so sudden, so violent, that I stumbled backward. "Let's see what the crazy lady brought," Harold said, dumping the contents of my bag onto the marble floor. Documents scattered everywhere. And then my family photographs spilled out. Precious pictures of my father standing in front of this very building during construction, pictures of my mother in her garden, pictures of me as a child sitting on my father's shoulders. Harold picked up the photo of my father. "Oh my God," he said, his voice mocking. "Look at this. She's got photos of our founder. She's not just a stalker, she's an obsessed stalker." "That's my father," I whispered, tears filling my eyes. "Please, that's my—" Diane stepped forward, and I'll never forget what she did next. She took the photograph from Harold's hand, looked me straight in the eyes, and dropped it on the floor. Then she stepped on it with her sharp heel, grinding it into the marble. I heard the glass frame crack. I heard my own gasp of pain, like she'd stepped on my heart instead of a photograph. "Your father?" Patricia said, her voice venomous. "Your father was the founder of Sterling Industries? You're not just delusional, honey. You're completely insane." I dropped to my knees, trying to gather the photographs, trying to save them. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick them up. Some were torn, some had footprints on them. My mother's face, smiling in the garden she loved, was smudged with the dirt from Diane's heel. "Please," I sobbed. "These are all I have left of them. Please." Harold crouched down beside me, and for a moment I thought he might help. Instead, he grabbed the merger documents that had fallen out. "Well, well," he said. "Looks like she didn't just stalk, she stole. These are classified company files." "I didn't steal them," I cried. "Christopher left them at home. I brought them for him. That's all. That's all I wanted to do." "She's lying," Diane announced loudly. Several employees had gathered in the lobby now, watching the scene unfold. Some had their phones out, recording. "She stole confidential documents. This is corporate espionage. Call the police." "No, no, no," I pleaded, still on my knees, surrounded by my destroyed photographs. "Please just call Christopher. Call his office. He'll tell you. He'll explain." Patricia pulled out her phone, but instead of calling Christopher, she opened the company's internal messaging app. She took a photo of me, crying, on my knees, surrounded by scattered papers, and I watched her type a caption. "Crazy stalker tried infiltrating our building LOL. Security handled it." She hit send. Within seconds, I heard phones buzzing all around the lobby. Employees were looking at their phones, then looking at me, then laughing. Some came closer to get a better look. Someone else started recording. I was surrounded by a circle of people treating my pain like entertainment. "Please let me call him," I begged. "Let me call my husband." "Your husband," Harold sneered. He grabbed my arm and yanked me to my feet so roughly that I cried out. My mother's cardigan sleeve tore. The sound of the fabric ripping was like another piece of my heart breaking. That's when Bruno and the security guards moved in. Bruno grabbed me by both arms, his grip so tight I knew there would be bruises. "Let's go, lady. Time to take out the trash." "Wait," a young voice said. A receptionist, she couldn't have been more than 22, stepped forward hesitantly. Her name tag said Maya. "Maybe we should just verify, just to be sure? We could call Mr. Bennett's assistant." "Maya!" Patricia's voice cracked like a whip. "You're fired! Pack your desk, now!" Maya's face went white. She stepped back, and I saw her hands trembling. She'd tried to help me, and it cost her job. The injustice of it made me want to scream. Bruno started dragging me toward the exit. My feet barely touched the ground. The marble floor scraped against my knees as I struggled. I felt my knee split open, felt the warm trickle of blood. People were still recording, still laughing. Someone shouted, "World Star!" like this was some kind of viral fight video. They threw me out the front doors, actually threw me, and I landed hard on the concrete sidewalk outside. My hands scraped. My knee was bleeding. My mother's cardigan was torn. The documents and photographs were still inside, confiscated like evidence of a crime I didn't commit. The glass doors locked behind me with a decisive click. Through the glass I could see Patricia, Harold, and Diane high-fiving each other, celebrating. They'd just humiliated and physically assaulted someone, and they were celebrating. I sat on that sidewalk, bleeding and crying, and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I called Christopher. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called again. This time he declined the call. I watched the screen show, "Call declined," and something inside me cracked. I texted him, "Chris, I'm hurt. They threw me out of your building. I have your documents." I watched the text show, "Delivered," then read. He read my message. He saw that I was hurt, that I'd been thrown out, and he didn't respond. Not a word, not a call, nothing. That's when I knew. That's when all the pieces came together in my mind like a horrible puzzle. This was intentional. Christopher wanted this to happen. He wanted me humiliated, traumatized, broken. But why? I opened my phone's banking app with trembling, bloody fingers. Our joint account, the one with our savings, our emergency fund, everything, was at 0, emptied. I checked my personal account, frozen. I couldn't access my own money. Then I logged into the company portal. I still had access because I was a shareholder, even though I'd never used it before. And there, in the recent transactions, I saw it. My shares, my 40% of my father's company, were being transferred. Forged signatures, backdated documents. Christopher was stealing my inheritance, my birthright, my father's legacy. The forgotten documents weren't forgotten. This whole thing was a setup. He wanted me to come to the building. He wanted his executives to destroy me. He wanted me broken and traumatized so that when he presented the divorce papers, I'd sign anything just to escape. He'd take everything, the company, the money, my father's legacy, and leave me with nothing. I looked at my reflection in a store window across the street. I saw a broken woman in torn clothes with blood on her knees and tear-stained cheeks. I saw someone who'd been kind, who'd been trusting, who'd been gentle, and I realized that every single person who'd hurt me today thought I was weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. "Franklin," I said when he answered. "It's Autumn. I need everything. Now." Mr. Franklin had been my father's lawyer for 30 years. He'd helped draft my father's will. He'd tried to warn me about staying invisible in the company. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Autumn, once we do this, there's no going back. The whole company will know who you are." "He tried to destroy me," I said, my voice cold and clear. "They all did. Burn it down, Franklin. Burn it all down." "I'll have emergency board papers ready in 20 minutes, Franklin said. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. He'd been waiting for this call. "Make it 15, I said. "And Franklin? Call the federal auditors. I want every transaction investigated. If Christopher's stealing, I want him in prison." "Consider it done." I sat on that sidewalk for 25 minutes. People walked past me. Some stared. Some looked away. Nobody helped. I watched my blood dry on my scraped knee. I felt my mother's torn cardigan fluttering in the wind, and I waited. A black luxury car pulled up to the curb. Franklin stepped out, followed by 2 other lawyers I recognized from my father's legal team. Franklin took one look at me, and his face filled with rage. "Did they do this to you?" "Take pictures," I said. "We'll need them for the assault charges." While one lawyer photographed my injuries, Franklin handed me a garment bag. "Your father kept a spare suit in his office. I thought you might want it." I changed in the car, right there on the street. I didn't care who saw. I pulled on my father's gray suit. It fit perfectly because I'd grown to be exactly his height. I fixed my hair in the car mirror, I bandaged my wounds, and I watched my face transform from victim to something else, something harder, something powerful. When I stepped out of that car, I was no longer the crying woman they'd thrown out. I was my father's daughter. I was the majority shareholder. I was about to rain fire on every single person who'd hurt me. Bruno saw me coming. I watched his face change from confusion to recognition to fear. He moved to block me, but Franklin stepped forward. "Touch her again," Franklin said quietly, "and I'll have you arrested for assault. We have hospital photos, we have witnesses, we have security footage. Touch her." Bruno's hands dropped to his sides. I walked past him without a word, without even looking at him. He wasn't worth my attention anymore. The lobby went silent as I entered. Every phone that had been recording my humiliation was now recording my return. Employees whispered to each other. Patricia, Harold, and Diane were still there, now sitting on the leather couch, laughing about something. They looked up when the whispers grew louder. Patricia saw me first. Her laughter died. "What the—" I walked straight to the executive elevator, the one reserved for top management, the one I'd never used because I'd never needed to. Diane moved to block me. "You're not allowed in that—" "Move," I said, just one word, but I said it with such cold authority that Diane actually stepped back, her mouth opening in confusion. Franklin and the lawyers followed me into the elevator. Harold tried to squeeze in after us. Franklin put his hand on Harold's chest. "Not you," Franklin said with a smile. "You're about to be very unemployed." The elevator doors closed on their shocked faces. I watched the numbers climb, 30, 40, 50, until we reached the 60th floor, the executive suite, Christopher's domain. I didn't knock. I never knocked on doors in my own building. I walked straight into Christopher's office, and there he was. My husband of 8 years. The man I'd loved. The man I'd trusted. He wasn't alone. Veronica from marketing was sitting on his desk, her hand on his chest, and they were kissing. They sprang apart when they heard us enter, but it was too late. I'd seen everything I needed to see. "Autumn?" Christopher stammered, his face going pale. Why are you dressed like— how did you—" I placed my briefcase on his desk, my father's old briefcase that Franklin had brought. I opened it slowly, deliberately, letting the anticipation build. Then I pulled out a folder and laid it in front of him. "These are federal investigation notices," I said calmly. "For fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. They're addressed to you, Patricia, Harold, and Diane." Christopher's hands were shaking as he picked up the papers. Veronica had gone completely white, frozen on the edge of the desk. "Did you think I didn't know?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "About the stolen money? About the offshore accounts? About Veronica? About the forged signatures on the share transfer documents?" "I can explain," Christopher started. "Explain to the FBI," I interrupted. "They're in the building now." On cue, Franklin opened the office door. 3 federal agents in dark suits entered. Veronica tried to run. An agent blocked her path. "Veronica Chen, you're under investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud. Don't leave the city." Christopher stood up, his face a mixture of anger and panic. "Autumn, you can't do this. We can work this out. We're married. You love me." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No love, no pain, just cold satisfaction. "Did you love me when you planned to steal my father's company? Did you love me when you emptied our bank accounts? Did you love me when you set me up to be humiliated, assaulted, and thrown bleeding onto the street?" His silence was my answer. "Franklin," I said, "call an emergency board meeting. Now. Full board. All hands. I'm exercising my rights as majority shareholder." 20 minutes later, I walked into the boardroom. The entire board was there. 12 people who'd never seen me before, who'd never known I existed. They looked confused, annoyed at being summoned on short notice. The chairman, an older man named George, frowned at me. "Who are you? Where's Christopher?" "Christopher Bennett is currently being investigated by federal agents," I said, moving to the head of the table. "I'm Autumn Bennett. I own 40% of Sterling Industries. My father founded this company, and today, I'm taking it back." "But Christopher has the controlling—" George started. Franklin laid documents on the table. The share transfer documents were forged. Analysis by 3 independent handwriting experts confirms Autumn's signature was forged. The transfers are void. Autumn retains her 40%. Additionally, proxy votes from the Morrison Trust and the Chen Family Foundation, which together hold 12% of board shares, have been transferred to Autumn. She now controls 52% of Sterling Industries. The room erupted, board members shouting, some angry, some confused. George banged his gavel. "This is irregular. We need to verify." "Verify all you want," I said. "But while you do, I'm exercising my controlling vote. Christopher Bennett is removed as CEO effective immediately. Patricia Williams is terminated. Harold Chen is terminated. Diane Foster is terminated. Security Chief Bruno Martinez is terminated. All for cause, no severance, pending criminal investigation." "You can't just—" one board member started. "I can," I said, "and I am. This company was built on respect and integrity. What happened today, what has been happening for the past year while you all looked the other way, violated everything my father built. So yes, I'm cleaning house. Anyone who has a problem with that can submit their resignation." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I'd just fired 4 top executives and announced criminal investigations, and nobody dared challenge me. "Good," I said. "Franklin will serve as interim CEO until we hire a replacement. Board meeting adjourned." I walked out of that boardroom and took the elevator straight down to the lobby. Word had already spread. The entire first floor was packed with employees, hundreds of them all staring at me. Security had been called to manage the crowd. News vans were pulling up outside. Someone had leaked the story. I saw Patricia, Harold, and Diane standing near the entrance, surrounded by security guards. They weren't in handcuffs yet, but they would be soon. Their faces were ashen. Their careers were over. Their reputations destroyed. I walked to the center of the lobby, and someone handed me a microphone. The crowd went silent. "Earlier today," I said, my voice echoing through the marble space. I came to this building wearing my dead mother's cardigan. I came to help my husband. I came with important documents for a company meeting. Instead, your executives destroyed my mother's photographs. They tore her cardigan. They had me dragged across this floor, bleeding. They filmed my pain and shared it for entertainment. They mocked me, humiliated me, and threw me bleeding onto the street. I could see phones recording. This was going to be everywhere by tonight. Good. Let it be everywhere. Patricia, Harold, Diane, you judged me by my clothes. You assumed I was poor, homeless, crazy. You never thought to ask who I was. You never thought that the simple woman in the old cardigan might be the person who owned this building. Well, now you know, and now you're fired. But it's not just firing. I'm pressing charges for assault, theft, destruction of personal property, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Bruno, your security chief, will face similar charges. Patricia's face crumpled. She was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. Harold's expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he was trembling. Diane just stared at me, horror-struck. This company will change, I continued. We will treat people with respect. All people, regardless of how they dress or where they come from. We will remember that kindness matters, that integrity matters, that every person who walks through these doors deserves basic human dignity. I paused, then found Maya in the crowd. She was standing near the back, still holding a small box with her desk belongings, tears streaming down her face. "Maya," I called out. She looked up, terrified. "You tried to help me when no one else would. You risked your job to suggest they verify my identity. You showed courage and compassion. How would you like to be my executive assistant?" Maya's box crashed to the floor. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Really?" she whispered, though the microphone picked it up. "Really," I said. "Report to the 60th floor Monday morning. You're hired." The crowd erupted in applause. Some were crying. Some were cheering. The tide had turned completely. Federal agents led Patricia, Harold, and Diane toward the exits. News cameras captured every moment. Their names would be on every news site by tonight, attached to words like fraud and assault and fired. Their LinkedIn profiles would be flooded with comments. Their careers were finished. Christopher was let out last, still in handcuffs. Our eyes met across the lobby. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Autumn!" he called out. "Please, we can fix this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I walked toward him slowly. The crowd parted. When I was close enough that only he could hear me, I spoke. "You're not sorry you hurt me," I said quietly. "You're sorry you got caught. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought you could destroy me and take everything. But you forgot one thing. I'm my father's daughter, and my father didn't build an empire by being weak." I turned to the federal agents. "Take him." They did. I didn't watch him go. I'd already wasted 8 years looking at him. I wasn't going to waste another second. 1 week later, I sat in my father's old office, now mine. Franklin had cleaned it, but he'd left my father's personal items exactly where they'd been: his coffee mug, his favorite pen, his photograph with my mother on their wedding day. I'd had my mother's cardigan professionally repaired and framed, hanging it on the wall alongside my father's original business license. Reminders of where I came from, reminders of who I was. Franklin knocked and entered, carrying a folder. "Thought you'd want to know the latest," he said. "Tell me," I said. "Christopher's facing 15 to 20 years for fraud and embezzlement. He'd stolen over $50 million. Patricia, Harold, and Diane are facing similar charges. They were all in on it together. They'd been planning to bankrupt the company, buy it for pennies, and resell it. You coming to the building that day disrupted their entire timeline. That's why they panicked." I nodded slowly. "And Veronica?" "Turned state's witness. She'll get a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. She's already given them everything. Emails, text messages, recordings. Christopher's lawyers are advising him to take a plea deal." "Good," I said. "And the company?" "Stock is up 22%. Franklin smiled. Once news broke that the corruption was cleaned out and that the founder's daughter was taking over, investor confidence soared. We've had 3 acquisition offers this week alone, and the press coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. You're being called the youngest female CEO to take control of a Fortune 500 company through shareholder action. I looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, Christopher was in a federal holding facility. Patricia, Harold, and Diane were meeting with lawyers they couldn't afford. Bruno was looking for work that wouldn't hire him once they Googled his name. And Veronica was learning that betrayal has consequences. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said to Franklin. "If they'd just been kind, if they'd just treated me like a human being, checked my identity, made one phone call, none of this would have happened. They'd still have their jobs. Christopher might have succeeded in his plan eventually, but their cruelty, their assumption that someone in old clothes wasn't worth basic respect, that's what destroyed them." "Pride before the fall," Franklin said. "More like cruelty before the fall," I corrected. Maya knocked on the open door, carrying 2 coffee cups. She'd taken to the role of executive assistant like she was born for it. "Your 10 o'clock is here," she said. "The reporter from Business Weekly?" "Send them in," I said. The reporter was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a recorder. She sat down, pressed record, and asked the question I knew was coming. "Ms. Bennett, you've become a viral sensation. The video of you confronting your husband's executives has over 50 million views. People are calling you an icon for everyone who's ever been underestimated. How does that feel?" I thought about it carefully. I didn't want to become famous, I said honestly. I didn't want revenge, not really. I just wanted to deliver documents to my husband. But they made a choice. They chose cruelty over kindness. They chose mockery over verification. They chose to destroy someone's precious family photographs and tear an old woman's cardigan rather than make a simple phone call. And that choice cost them everything. "Do you have any message for people who've been in similar situations?" the reporter asked. I looked at the camera. "Never let anyone make you feel small because of how you look or what you wear. Never let cruelty break you. And never forget, the quietest person in the room, the simplest person in the room, might be the most powerful. They just haven't had a reason to show it yet." The interview ended. The reporter left. Maya brought me the afternoon schedule. And I got to work running my father's company the way he would have wanted, with integrity, respect, and kindness. That evening, I locked the office and took the subway home, the same subway I'd taken that terrible morning. I was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, hair in a ponytail, and I smiled at a young woman in an old coat who was struggling with shopping bags, helping her carry them up the stairs. She thanked me, and as she walked away, I wondered what she'd think if she knew the simply dressed woman who'd helped her was worth $500 million. But that was the point, wasn't it? Kindness doesn't require expensive clothes. Respect doesn't come from designer labels. And power, real power, is in choosing to help someone even when you have nothing to gain. My mother taught me that, wearing her old cardigan and tending her garden. My father taught me that, building his company on handshake deals and honest work. And Christopher, Patricia, Harold, and Diane, they taught me that sometimes people need to lose everything before they learn that how you treat others matters more than anything else. They laughed at the simple woman in the old cardigan. They mocked her. They hurt her. They threw her bleeding onto the street. But that simple woman? She owned the entire building, and she made sure they never forgot it. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me about a time you were underestimated. I read every single one. And subscribe because I share real stories about justice and karma every single week. Remember, never judge a book by its cover because you never know who you're really talking to. The woman in the old cardigan might just be the one who signs your paycheck or fires you. See you in the next one.